This is episode 224 of The Blockchain Show with Martin Fiore.
The Blockchain Show is a podcast that demystifies cryptocurrencies and distributed ledger technology.
The tax deadline is passed this year, but if you filed for an extension or you want to know some best practices for next year's taxes and how to manage your crypto data, then I think you'll find some value in this episode. Our guest today is Martin Fiore, Managing Partner for the Eey US East Region Tax Practice. Martin, welcome to the Blockchain Show. Thanks for joining me today.
Ethan, thank you for having me. It's exciting to be with you. I've been at EY for the last 20 plus years and currently in the role as the EY Tax Regional Partner. And it's a pleasure to be with you.
I'm kind of interested to hear your background and how you got involved dealing with cryptocurrencies. Maybe we should start there if you'd like to share any stories with that.
Yeah, it probably was, when cryptocurrencies started to come out. I've always been interested in what's coming next from a technology perspective. In fact, I just finished a book, Humanity Reimagined, that talks about the interchange and fusion of humans and technology. So kind of have a keen background in this space. But it's a quick, funny story. I was introduced to crypto by one of my young cousins who we were out at New York City one night, and she was showing me something on her phone, and she said, "Did you ever hear of cryptocurrencies?" And I said, "No, I hadn't." And it was that evening that she kind of gave me one crypto, and that was many years ago now that I think about it. And I kind of learned it from a much younger person that introduced it to me. And I've been kind of tracking it since. And being on the tax side of the world, Ethan, it is fascinating. There's so much happening so quickly. I mean, we have crypto, we have NFTs, we have the Metaverse. There's so much that's going on. And the question is, what about tax? And I think that could be a real fun topic for us.
Yeah, it's funny. You mentioned the Metaverse, and people are actually buying property in the Metaverse, and I was wondering, do you have to pay taxes on that in the real world, or does that all just kind of stay in the Metaverse? Yeah, maybe point out some new changes in tax over the last several years, since more and more people have been getting involved with these technologies and means of transaction.
Well, yeah, maybe we'll start with at a macro level, kind of my view of how I see all this coming together, and then let's talk about some of the basics and some of the new things that are happening. And I mean, there's changes every day. I was reading changes even up to last week on some things happening in this space. And I think the example that really resonates with me is I buy an avatar t-shirt and I've got to pick up a gain or loss on the crypto I used to buy it. Then the t-shirt itself I bought in the Metaverse. Well, there should be a sales tax on that shirt that I just bought. And then the place I bought it in that Metaverse, I bought it at a store. That store either has rental property or real property that it bought, and it needs to pay property tax if it happens to own that property. So there's all kinds of tax implications as you think about that whole supply chain and what's happening around us.
You said you mentioned you knew people who were starting to buy cryptocurrencies. Do you remember what year it was?
Yeah, it was pre-COVID. It was probably 2016, 2017 in that space, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, because I remember a little before then hearing about it from a friend, and I thought, okay, well, that's like, people were using it on the dark web to, buy drugs and guns and stuff like that. And I was like, well, we'll see where this goes. And then I kind of fell off my radar for a little while. And then I think it was right around 2016. That's when we started the podcast, that I started looking into the technology behind it and started realizing, okay, there's a lot more to this than the dark web stuff that a lot of the news and hit pieces were talking about at the time. And we're to the point now where on Wall Street Journal they're talking about Ethereum and that sort of thing. So, and I would imagine in your line of work you've seen probably a lot more stuff come in. How do we deal with this? There's got to be a lot more challenges in filing taxes each successive year. So
yeah, Ethan, you talked about kind of the beginning. A lot of people saw the dark side to this. I saw, it's very positive, as you were leading up to, there's a lot of real positive things that are happening. Think about currency. a lot of governments are even trying to get some type of electronic currency so that everybody has access to it as a move away from like a physical piece of cash. I know that just recently, just give you an update on digital cash around the world. There was a recent proposal in the US just in the last few months, last 6 months, to create a pilot, and it was going to focus on electronic currency. And the idea would be, it would be kind of the version of US dollar, but it'd be a virtual dollar, and there wouldn't be any of the fees attached to it, and it would mimic cash. It would be private, easy to use, and it wouldn't have all those fees that are associated with it. And that will help get to individuals that don't have access to cryptocurrency on the internet and other ways. And then even in Europe, they have plans to propose a digital euro, and that's coming in the next year or two. And then if you kind of move across the world over to Asia, China actually instituted the pilot program for their currency. Singapore is a huge hub for currency, and even South Korea, I think, is in the top 5 countries for crypto. So you kind of see it running across the globe, and every country has a little bit different point of view on it. I know when we talked about cryptocurrency, you kind of have to watch out which countries it's legal, not legal in. For example, China, there's a ban on crypto transactions. Basically, the government feels like it kind of hinders their control over the capital flows. But a lot of these other countries, it's legal and there's laws and regulations around it.
Yeah, that is interesting. What's going on in China there, because I know for a while a lot of mining shut down for Bitcoin, so a lot of opportunity was happening in other parts of the world. And it's kind of interesting because I was talking to another guest a few weeks ago about different sanctions and other things going on in Russia and Ukraine. And even though I understand the different governments around the world deciding to do that, it makes sense. Couldn't help but think about the citizens caught in between, and I was wondering, is it possible to stop Bitcoin transactions, like China is trying to do with their citizens? Because if the system's working the way it should, peer-to-peer transactions, should still work as long as you have an internet connected device. I'm not saying anybody should break any laws in their country, but I'm pretty sure that was one of the main reasons that Bitcoin, for instance, was created, as like a internet cash. And I think lately it's become more of like a internet gold or a digital asset than an actual means of exchanging funds for goods and services. But yeah, it's been a kind of a wild ride watching these things and talking to different people. Do you have any take on how internationally crypto might kind of change the different financial powers? Or
I just think when at a macro level, when we talk about cryptocurrencies and the financial world, I think it becomes more important. And my examples I just kind of went through in different parts of the world shows that compared to a few years ago, digital currency of some form isn't catching on. I think that's really the key takeaway. I go back to 2014, 2016, most countries were not focused on it, and it was nascent, and now it's becoming more mainstream. And so it's very interesting to see how countries have moved to their stance on cryptocurrency to their own proposal on their virtual currency. And so I still think the jury's out on kind of where this lands. In your example, peer-to-peer is a way that is independent of a country. And when we talk about these virtual currencies issued by governments, then we're kind of replicating what we know as kind of fiat money. And so I think there's two different swim lanes that are being built out, and we'll see where they cross or stay independent. Be interesting to see. It's happening really fast.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And when I was hearing you talk earlier, I was thinking about how this relates to taxes, because theoretically on the blockchain you can check pretty much any transaction. You can see it goes from one wallet to another. So it's kind of pseudo anonymous. But I was thinking it might make taxes. It should. This is maybe just a bad thought, but it should make it easier to keep track of where money's going and how much income someone's making. Could be a good or bad thing depending on the person, I guess. But the way it's working right now, it just seems like we're trying to make it fit in the old system, and I'm kind of envisioning a future where, taxes are just easy, a couple clicks. It's like, here's all my This is assuming everything's done in, crypto, which is not going to happen anytime soon. But what are some challenges in filing taxes, and do you see anything that might improve that in regards to cryptocurrencies?
Yeah. Look, I first think it's take a U.S. point of view for a minute. We've got the IRS that has come a long way in understanding technology, and I think that's really important. The cornerstone of trust in this space is going to be that we have regulations to point out how we manage and report it. So as the IRS continues to issue guidance and makes things, as you said, easier, for example, the 1040 tax return is what most of us file. There's now a box on page 1 that asks the question, have you had any type of virtual currency? And so I think that's going to help us tremendously. But to your point, the world's moving so fast. I'll give you an example. So we have a lot of different things happening. So if we buy and sell currency, the question is, from a tax reporting perspective, you have to report gain and loss on that. And that gain or loss, they call it a capital gain, and you report that in your tax return on a schedule they refer to as Schedule D. The question happens to many is, I don't remember what I bought it at. What was my cost basis? Because if I sell it a year or two from when I bought it, my gain that I have to realize is the difference between what I sold it on today versus what I bought it at, which is my cost basis. And many of these platforms that you use may not track your cost basis. And so that causes to be a challenge. Like you're saying, where do I report it? How much gain or loss do I have? Becomes very challenging. What's kind of fun for us at EY, we developed this really great technology. It's called Eey TaxChat. And Ethan, you can go out on the internet, download it on your phone, and through your phone, we'll help you prepare your tax return. And you take pictures of all your documents. We'll put it all on a tax reform and file it for you. And behind the scenes, what we help individuals do is track their data. So if you purchased some cryptocurrencies on day one, we have basically a form that you put in your cost basis, and then we know what you sold it at, and then we can track all that for you and produce a form. And that's come a long way, because I know in the past there was a number of companies out there that would just track it for you, but actually, and so we kind of moved all that into a whole new virtual world where you can access it through an app. And I think that's a pretty interesting way to try to make life much simpler for individuals.
Yeah, that sounds really good. I definitely could use some help, so I'll definitely have to check that out. It's interesting because I was reading an article about I think it was TurboTax and a few other companies that help people prepare their taxes, actually lobbying against reforms to make it simpler and easy, which I thought, man, that's kind of a jerk move, but I understand that's their business and they make money from helping people. Have you heard anything about that? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I haven't read those articles. Look, I'm a big proponent of having procedures and regulations in place, because then we know what to do. It gives us a roadmap what to do. The worst case to be is not having kind of a path forward, and then 2 or 3 years from now, you get a notice from the IRS asking you for information, and you have no idea where it is, and then you kind of get into this whole audit of all your information. And so I'm a big believer in, as the regulators get more sophisticated and comfortable with this space, they give us guidelines and we can follow it. I'd also say it's not that complicated. When we think about the virtual world, I always go back and compare it to the world we live in and how we record capital gains and losses on assets from a security that we buy. There's a very, very parallel process on the virtual side. And I don't think it's as complicated as sometimes we hear. And that's why I think tools like the Eey Tax Chat and things that we do try to make it easy and less painful for the end user. But I do agree. There's a lot out there. I mean, you could think about all of the things that happen in a trade or business, as we were talking about earlier. You could think about different types of trading that you do with crypto that get into kind of different things that we learn every day. Maybe we talk about, sometimes you hear these comments about airdrops. Are they taxable? A hard fork, staking, all those things have a tax ramification to them. So my bottom line is that when you think about all the new things that are coming out, you have to think about the tax aspects of them, because they're probably reportable and there's probably a gain or loss on those types of transactions.
Yeah. No, I like what you said, and I agree with you, because I guess it's not overly complicated. I think I guess it depends on how involved people are with it. But like you said, it's good to have things in order, and it just seems like you're very thoughtful, and you guys are thinking about this a lot more than some of the other, I don't know what to call them, companies that people could go to. And I think in the future with more metaverse transactions, NFTs, I'm sure there's always going to be people buying and selling crypto. It's going to get harder and harder to keep track of things. So definitely, I'll have to put a link in the show notes so people can check out that app that you were talking about.
Yeah, Eey Tax Chat. It's great app, and kind of helps you get through this stuff that's complicated, right?
Yeah, like you said earlier, it's an interesting time where we're kind of, I don't know if it's an in-between time or we're just slowly adopting. And I used to spend a lot of energy on this show trying to explain the technology, or rather having experts come on to explain the technology, hoping that if people were getting more educated or understood the technology, it would get adopted quicker. But the more I think about it, it's like, I don't know if the everyday layperson really cares about, how an NFT works or how, the blockchain works. It's like people really don't care about how their computer works or how Bluetooth works. It's just like, as long as it works and it has utility, it'll get adopted. So I think we're starting to get more into more utility type projects coming out. And yeah, it's just been kind of fun to watch over the years, especially when there's huge spikes in the price of different cryptocurrencies. There's a lot of interest, a lot of hype, and then there's a huge crash, and then everyone's like, oh, well, it's over. I don't want to get involved with that. And then it'll come back up, and it's hilarious, really. But
I agree with you. I think, you talk about the metaverse. I know you're familiar with Second Life, right? As a platform. And I know recently, it was just in the last month or two, I think they introduced their position on taxes, and they announced that they would follow there's this famous 2018 Supreme Court case between South Dakota and Wayfair. Wayfair is the online store. And they decided that they will start taxing individuals based on where that individual physically is located. And so I think that announcement, to your point, we're kind of in this in-between period where everybody's trying to figure out, how much do I report, over-report, under-report, and what impact does that have on my business? So I thought that was a major step forward by, a platform to say, we do think that we need to collect tax for the goods that we're selling on our platform.
Yeah, it's always better to be safe than sorry with this sort of thing. Especially younger friends I have, they kind of, a lot of them some don't even do taxes. I'm like, what do you do? What are you doing?
Right.
Are you crazy? Like, you just do it. I mean, not to mention, like, later in life, you're going to be glad you did for, what you've been paying in for Social Security and stuff like that. But I don't know. I meet all sorts of people in Los Angeles. I shouldn't say that.
Yeah.
They're not all my friends.
Well, but, the younger generation, I get it. I mean, they're in the technology they get is moving so fast. I mean, it's hard to keep up with. And that was one of the challenges that we put in front of ourselves and tried to solve with this Eey Tax Chat platform. There's a lot of younger people they do everything on their phone. And we felt like one way to help solve some of these challenges is put access to them at their fingertips with this app. And so if they're doing interesting things like this, they can text a message to someone that understands taxes and say, hey, I just did this. Do I need to pay tax on it? Or how does that work? And I think that's a way for us to kind of help, we have this motto of building a better working world. And I really believe this is one of the ways that we could do it. Ethan, I don't know if I'll go back to this. I mentioned earlier, I wrote a book, Humanity Reimagined. And through my research, one of the things I came across, it's kind of interesting, is they refer to these as Gutenberg moments. So you go back to Gutenberg and the printing press. It wasn't the press that he invented, but the process. And it revolutionized the world for 100 years. There's a latest statistic out there that say we have about 14 of these Gutenberg moments a year. And I think that's totally accurate. And the pace of change is phenomenal. And to think about how all these governments keep up with it, how we keep up with it, is a huge challenge, right? And so that's kind of an optimistic way of looking at, let's just find solutions as these new opportunities come up in the world.
Yeah, I like what you said there. I actually went to the city in Germany where they had a statue of Gutenberg, and it's funny. I heard something. I don't know if it's true, but the overwhelming majority of the early books printed were how to catch witches or something like about witchcraft, which it made me. I don't know if it's true. I think I heard it on another podcast, but it's just kind of funny because here's this great technological invention, and then humans are using it to basically do a lot of nonsense. I don't know. My wife might disagree with me, but and you said there's like 14 of those events, Gutenberg events a year. That's
A year.
That's hard to imagine, even like this, the rate of change. And most people, I guess I'm one of them, aren't even aware of all these changes that are happening. Hopefully humanity can use the best of this technology or use it with the best intentions is what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah. Yeah, we need podcasts like this just to bring awareness, right? There's that old saying, it goes from, awareness kind of brings you all the way to believing and understanding and then able to execute, right? And so I do think podcasts like this, where we can talk about these issues and try to simplify it, makes a big difference for all of us.
Yeah. Apologize. I didn't realize you wrote a book. I would have tried to read it before, but
yeah,
it's a lot of work to write a book, I would imagine. But what inspired you, and what is the book about?
Yeah, so the book is called Humanity Reimagined, and I was in a role for a while where I was trying to figure out the strategy of what we do with our next generation of leaders. And one of the things that I came across is how quickly, as I described that Gutenberg moment, how quickly there's the fusion of humans and technology. And, we're so used to technology around us, right? Wearable technology, Coinbase, all of these things, Fitbit watches, all this stuff that we wear around us and makes our life easier. But that's just the brink of what, in my view, is about to happen. I really think civilization is going to change probably most since it's been created, with integrating technology within humans. Like, you think about it, we can now put technology within our bodies that will help cure things, right? Cure diabetes, cure depression. We can put in 3D printed organs that are created based on your size and scale. And we are going to see so much fusion of humans and technology, and for the good, right? But it'll raise a lot of really interesting questions that at some point, you and I might have to sit here and say, how much of our body percent-wise is human or embedded into us, right? Whether they're organs or just technology that's placed in just to help us live longer. And, I think they said today, the person that will live to 200 years old has been born already, right? So there's big change and happen to us as humans. And the book was really about, hey, just bring awareness to that topic. And do we need guardrails in place to make sure we protect humanity at a macro level?
Yeah, that's really, really well said, and some pretty deep thoughts, because the rate of change and innovation is happening so quickly that the regulatory agencies they can't keep up. I mean, it takes, I don't know, almost a decade sometimes just to complete a highway. So let alone how are they going to be able to regulate automated vehicles or robots like Elon Musk is creating. It's funny because I got an email this morning from from an AI agent. And I read it a couple times through. I was like, is this a joke? Is someone trying to play a prank on me? And it was at the bottom. It said written by a simulated agent, and it was really strange because I read it and I'm like, this isn't right. Something's off here. And I don't know if you've read any of those like articles written by AI, and it was someone wanted to be on the show, and they must have just had their AI assistant generate this email for me, and it was all about collecting memories. So making like a Google of memories or something like that. And I almost just deleted it right away because it freaked me out. But it brought up some interesting questions, like if someone's talking long enough on the internet or they have enough social media posts, AI can put together a pretty good compilation of who they are. And I don't know, man, the future it's going to be weird, but it's also a really interesting time to be alive. More of a comment. Sorry to go off on a tangent on what you said, but that just reminded me of something.
I think you're right. I think you're onto it. I think we need to make a decision at some point through awareness is what kind of guardrails you have in place around all of this. Someone taking your data, scraping the data off the internet and coming up with a very customized email that went to you, and you're sitting there saying, is this real or not? It's kind of interesting, right? It's kind of something that's way beyond what we thought could actually happen through the internet.
Yeah. So have you always been interested in this sort of thing, or is this?
Yeah, it's always been a passion for mine, kind of looking around what's happening next. It's just amazing when you get an opportunity to see what's going to come out next. And then what I love the tax side of the conversation, because it's so kind of fun to figure out what happens. Like we talked about, I know we were talking about the metaverse, but there's so many people buying real estate in the metaverse now, right? You see all these articles of individuals on different platforms actually buying real estate. And I was thinking, oh, okay, so when do we start collecting property tax on that? And who does it fund? And there's interesting issues that happen in the metaverse, right? Do you need, for example, policing in the metaverse? What individuals do in there could be good or bad. And so how does that get funded? Who polices it? And I think, you sit there and say, well, why would we need to collect property tax in a virtual world? I think a virtual world is going to have some of the same issues that we have in our real world, right? And I think policing is just one example of that. But that's got a little ways to go to catch on, how do we do that, and how the property tax is collected, and then sales and use tax, the tax you pay when you buy or sell something in the metaverse is kind of interesting. What technology we use to actually collect it and report it. How do you ensure that the individuals that are buying it and selling it are reporting it? In the US, we kind of have a self-reporting system when we file our tax returns, right? It's kind of the honor system. And then from time to time, your tax return may be audited through the IRS, but overall, it's an honor system of providing information. And as it gets more complicated with transactions, it's going to get really, it'll create, what I love about it's creating jobs that don't even exist today, right? We talk about the things I just said on taxing and the IRS. You need a whole fleet of individuals that not only understand tax, but also understand technology. So to me, if I was, just coming out of school, this would be a time to jump a lot of these new ways of thinking from a technology perspective.
Yeah, that's interesting. Do you think that we need maybe like a new tax system to address these new era of digital commodities, or do you think that it's going to be pretty easy to just integrate it to the the existing legal system?
Probably decentralized finance, right? That's probably the macro term that captures kind of some of these new ways of securities being traded. So I think that umbrella itself is going to capture what you just said, Ethan. I think it's evolving for sure, but that whole world of trading and selling, and there's examples where you can go out and buy a house instead of going to a bank. You can go out to the blockchain, right, and get a number of individual peer-to-peers to lend you the money, and then you would be paying them back. And then the questions come up: is that interest? Is that what it's called? And then if so, once you define what kind of asset it is, then you have to define how do you treat that from a tax perspective? And once you figure out if it's taxable or not, you have to then figure out what the tax rate is based on the type of asset that you bought. So I think this decentralized finance is opening up a whole new world for all of us. I think it's exciting to kind of be at the beginning of that nascent technology.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you're on that, because we need more people like you, to be honest. Because it's almost like taxes has been an afterthought in this industry for years, and then it's like IRS is catching up, and people are like, "Oh yeah, I got to deal with taxes on my crypto," and then it's that moment of like, "Oh, what do I do?" And then, but I imagine that the IRS is going to have a lot more tools at their disposal. Hopefully, they're not going to punish people as hard in the beginning, because a lot of folks don't really know what's going on. Like if someone gets involved with DeFi and they've literally never had a crypto wallet before, and they're like, what do they do? I mean, it's not something we get taught in school, how to just basic taxes, just that.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think the IRS has been really pretty good over the last few years as they've come up to speed on it. They've issued some memorandums and things about how to treat certain tax items, and so I do think that they're coming along from that perspective. But it will be interesting to see. My advice though to anyone that's in this space is really just track and keep all your data, so that in the future you might need it if the regulations and laws are not fully rounded out yet. Kind of use this term trust but validate. Make sure you trust the system, but you have to have skepticism, and that to me means keeping the information and keeping records of what you've done, so that should it happen that you have to report it in the future, you have it ready for yourself. It'll make your life so much easier. And then look out for technology like, Eey TaxChat, where we try to simplify everybody's life with pushing their fingers on an app and giving them access to real people that understand all of the technical questions from a tax perspective. Because I do see this getting more complicated, Ethan, in a good way. To answer your question a little more fully, the IRS, even the infrastructure bill that President Joe Biden passed this past year, has a few things on there making reporting a requirement for some of these platforms, that they report to the government what some of the transactions are with individuals. Now, I think that's positive because it makes things much easier from a reporting perspective. So I do think that some of these infrastructure bills that have been issued will definitely help ease the understanding in this space.
Yeah, certainly. Do you have any thoughts on the future? Really, I mean, pick a topic: Metaverse, cryptocurrencies, NFTs, how it could impact the future of taxes, and do you think that any of these changes in the laws are going to maybe go back a few years, so people are going to have to retroactively refile or anything like that? Or
yeah, look, going forward, I think that we're going to see, in a positive way, fairness across the system. And what I mean by that is, what we do in the real world, we should do in the virtual world, right? Why not? I mean, it's for the benefit of everyone. And I think that this example of a virtual currency issued by a government to make everybody's life easier, where you don't have to pay fees and you don't have to track it, and it's private, you and I can do a transaction. I think that helps everyone, right? So it's not specific to a demographic or a piece of our population, but it gets everybody easy access. And the way that governments can do things like that is through taxation and collecting on things like they do in the real world and in the virtual world. And so I think that will evolve over time, and I do think the governments will get much more sophisticated as we move forward. And I think the IRS is in a tough position. When you think about it from a U.S. perspective, their workforce, the number of people they have, hasn't really changed for decades. However, the technology has progressed, right? Their budgets tend to get cut year after year, and their ability to keep up with everything has drastically changed. a little bit because of COVID, kind of work from home changed the way that they work, and then just the cuts in staff and the shortage of just labor in general causes them to be a little bit behind. So they're always working behind the eight ball, but they've certainly done a nice job in the last few years bringing out questions and answers to a lot of these questions on their websites, and issuing different types of documents that try to explain how you use this technology.
Yeah, very well said. Yeah, I'm definitely interested to see how it goes. Sometimes I feel like there's a character in one of the Marvel TV shows who's just a watcher. He just kind of stands back and watches everything that's happening, and it's largely what I do on the podcast. But it's really fun to talk with people such as yourself. You brought up a lot of good points today. And thanks for sharing your insights, your wisdom about tech. Definitely want to recommend people check out the services that you offer. So if you wouldn't mind telling us again where people can go to get help with their taxes.
Yeah, sure. Just real simple. Go to ey.com. ey.com is our webpage, and you can look at TaxChat. You can look up blockchain. You can look up the services we have to just track your crypto. So 5 easy steps over the internet. So we've really got a number of different ways for individuals and businesses both to leverage our technology. We have a umbrella service of blockchain at the highest level, and under that are a lot of things that we talked about today, mostly around tax, but transaction level, how to get on the blockchain. So many things that we've done as a professional service organization are out there. So again, TaxChat, ey.com. Reach out to me on LinkedIn or Twitter. More than happy to answer questions. But Ethan, I got to thank you for doing the podcast. I listen to a lot of your shows. It just brings a lot of awareness, and I love the artwork that you have on your show. So all great stuff.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, it's been a real pleasure speaking with you today.
We need a lot of conversations around this. And, if you're getting engaged in something using new technology, my thought would be there's probably going to be some type of reporting requirement, and reach out to, your tax advisor, who that might be, or visit our website, and we'll certainly help you define the path forward so you're not caught up in some issue in the future, and love to work with all of you.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Martin. Again, real pleasure talking to you. Appreciate it.
Great. Thank you, Ethan. It was a pleasure.
And thank you for listening to this episode of The Blockchain Show. Next week, we'll be talking to Frank Mong, the COO of Nova Labs, about helium. And that'll be our first video episode over on YouTube in quite a few years. It's been audio only for the most part, but I'm going to start putting some energy in that direction. So if you've not subscribed to YouTube and you want to check out the videos, that would really help me out. Thanks.